All right, so let's see what Sabine has to say. I saw this actually; it was pretty cool. I've been following the pyramids for a few years, and it's really cool that they managed to do this. Hopefully, they'll be doing more investigations. But
Some crazy news about a big underground structure that's supposedly underneath the Egyptian
mhm.
pyramids.
And I mean, if you're the sort of person who's like, "Oh, I don't believe in aliens or whatever, so this must not be true," or "Oh my God, it must mean that you believe in a flat Earth," and there's a lot of weird, really weird memes going around and a lot of weird thinking going around. So it just means that this is what they found, and you're free to have your own interpretation. So it definitely does blow up our our traditional understanding of history that we grew up in, and even as it slowly evolved over the last few decades, these discoveries really blow open all of that because there's no way primitive cultures were doing that. So who did it? We don't know. All we know is it was not the primitive cultures that we were led to believe. And even before this discovery, if you just take a step back and look at the Sphinx and the pyramids, it's it's not really believable that on the one hand they're primitive, they don't have access to modern tools, um, and then they're using ropes and pulleys, and then on the other hand there's only a few tens of thousands of them, so it doesn't add up. So there's a lot of question marks being raised, so let's see.
What's new and what are we to make of this? The recent news is about the three great pyramids in Giza in Egypt.
Yep.
On March 15th, a group of three researchers held a press conference in Italy in
Yep.
which they revealed a stunning discovery. They say that they've used a new method of tomography, more
Mm-hmm.
about that in a minute.
Yeah.
From this, they constructed 3D models which reveal new internal artificial structures. And not
Right.
only this, they also found something underground. Their
Right.
images, they claim, clearly reveal that structures exist beneath the plateau, extending below the pyramids for approximately 2 kilometers beneath ground level. These structures
So I mean, given the images that they got, which clearly indicates there's something below ground, something sophisticated, something that primitive cultures couldn't have done. Um, to extend it to this level of detail is a little bit excessive. So there's a little bit of interpretation and inference going on over here. But why not? If it gets people interested and allows us to poke into the pyramids and see what's really below there. If there's enough, social pressure, then we can hopefully get to discover what's underneath the pyramids in a few years, as opposed to in a few generations.
Structures form a vast area of non-natural constructions following complex geometries. Concretely, they say that the structures are 8 cylinders surrounded by something resembling spiral staircases. These structures, quote, descend to a depth of 648 meters, merging into two large cubic structures measuring approximately 80 meters per side, end quote. Big if true, so I've had a look. Unfortunately,
Yeah, I mean, 80 meters is pretty big.
Fortunately, there's no technical paper yet, but going by the press release and the earlier papers of the authors, I have a pretty good idea what this is about. Two of
Mm-hmm.
these researchers already published a paper in 2022 in which they introduced a new method to analyze structures in the pyramids. They call it synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography, which is quite a mouthful, but don't despair, it's not as difficult as it seems. First of all, synthetic aperture radar is a widely used technique to track ground movements. Typically, it's done by satellite, though it could also be done by drone or aircraft. You ping a radar across some terrain and track what comes back. You do this again at some other time, calculate an interference pattern between the two results, and that tells you how much the ground has moved. The radar typically
Mm-hmm.
uses wavelengths in the range of 10 gigahertz or so that's millimeter waves. These are quite easily blocked by big layers of rock, which is why you have no cell phone signal in the subway. So how do they want to see inside the pyramids and even under them? Here is where things become interesting. They say that they can use the radar images to track vibrations of the surfaces of the pyramids and of the ground, and that these surface vibrations encode what structures there are inside. Tomography means that you can look inside. The reason they call it Doppler tomography is that the vibrations cause a Doppler shift in the frequencies, so that's how they extract them. Technically, this is correct. You can, in principle, reconstruct the inside of an object from its surface vibrations. Indeed, this is used a lot by geophysicists to map out, for example, magma chambers underneath volcanoes. So you see, both the radar method and the tomography are quite standard methods. It's the combination that's new. In their earlier paper from 2022 that was published in a peer-reviewed journal, they said they'd use that to find structures inside the pyramids. The problem with this paper is that there is no discernible relation between the tomography images and the structures that they supposedly identified. I mean, look at this image. On the right is their measurement. On the left, you see overlaid the chamber we know is there. Alas, their signal is elsewhere. They seem to have randomly identified some structures in their tomography images and ignored others. Of course, I'm not the first to notice this. The 2022 paper was widely criticized and mostly ignored for this reason. They had no explanation for how they identified structures from their images. So what's new in 2025 is that they say they let AI do the job. So they didn't identify the structures, a computer did it. How do I know this? Well, for one thing, they said this in the press conference, but also one of the authors wrote a paper about this 2 years ago. Now look, I'm not a geophysicist, but I find this idea extremely implausible. Reconstructing what goes on inside an object from its surface vibrations is also how remote psychoanalysis on social media works, or for the most part doesn't work. In both cases, the major problem is that you need to have measurable vibrations in the first place. Volcanologists do this with seismic waves, which they track by sensors on the surface. Seismic waves typically have wavelengths in the range of 50 or 100 meters. The magma chambers that they map with this method are in that range too, maybe 100 meters near the surface or kilometers deeper underground. While there are always some seismic waves that'll also shake the pyramids a tiny little bit, they're in the wrong wavelength range to identify small structures, and they don't measure in that range in any case. They write in their paper that the frequency range they look at for the Doppler shift is something like 12 kilohertz, which in the stones of the pyramid corresponds to a wavelength of about 24 centimeter. There is no plausible source for these vibrations, which makes it unlikely that they have a signal to begin with. Also, let's do a sanity check. If this method actually worked, why isn't anyone else using it? Finally, the idea that the Egyptians would base a structure as heavy as the pyramids on something resembling pillars seems completely crazy to me. Let me also add some words on the two guys who've led these studies. Filippo Biondi previously worked at the Department of Electronic Engineering in Glasgow, but no longer works there. He's applied for a patent for the technology. The other author is Corrado Malanga, who, according to his own website, was a university researcher at the Department of Chemistry and Industrial Chemistry of the University of Pisa. He also has a theory of global alien interference that explains alien abductions as follows. Quote, "The abductee in the bottom right part is programmed using an alien active memory, and in the meantime they momentarily take out his soul component, The Little Red Ball. In summary, the story gets a 9 out of 10 on my bullshit meter. I'm not giving a 10 out of 10 because maybe this Doppler method isn't entirely crazy and just needs more work, but I'm pretty sure what they measure is just noise. If I'm wrong and there are 8 pillars underneath the pyramids, it's probably a strategy plan of the European Union. To me, science is more than a
So she's going to dive into ads, and yeah, that was an interesting one. So, yeah, I wanted to look into, yeah, mea culpa. I took their word for it. I assumed that it was a valid excavation technique, so non-invasive, a non-invasive method of imaging, but um, yeah, there are some. Yeah, so okay, it's rather unfortunate. It's rather unfortunate. I was hoping it was just some standard method and they applied it and there was something interesting to see, but I guess from this it's sort of she's going to question the credibility of the people who've who came up with this method. It doesn't mean that the method doesn't work. So, but it is a data point in terms of how seriously you can take the measurements or this information. But it would be nice if there was a way of doing further studies. And I mean, it does. One thing for sure is that there is stuff about the pyramids that, as I stated before, doesn't add up to our traditional understanding of history. I definitely do not believe that just generic general humans, as we know them, made this without some advanced technology. It's just not feasible. I mean, no matter which part of the world you come from, just stop and ask yourself, use common sense and look around. And when you've tried to get any work done, whether it's making a house or repairing a door or anything, it's very difficult to get very high quality work, even when it's something as simple as just getting a door installed or repairing a house. And when it comes to those pyramids, all over the world, when you see the scale of the work that was done and the quality of the work that was done, it's like saying that the Eiffel Tower or that skyscrapers were made with primitive instruments. It just sort of kind of beggars belief. It's just like there was something else going on. I don't know what it is. So I'll be honest. I saw what I wanted to see. I was hoping that there was something to their story, and there might be. So it would be interesting if there is large structures underneath the pyramids. Um, Again, it is a fair point. Why would they build something that heavy on top of hollow structures? And that is a big question mark. But again, if that is what's underneath it, then that's what's underneath it. So it does warrant some further investigation, I guess. And quite possibly, all they're looking at is just noise. And if they were to do some control studies or something to demonstrate that what they're seeing is more than just noise or echoes or shadows of the structures above, that might be interesting.